strike sharp, that's when the signal shines in. Got the mic set up and the camera spin. Grab a coffee, pull up your chair, join the drive. 'Cause the only place to be on a Monday night at 9 is right here, alive. We're drilling down deep on the legend of fur, the biggest mystery ever did stir. It's Sasquatch Watch Radio. Tune into the same with Gary Kendrick hosting with King. He's heard the howls, he's caught the form's trace, a true seeker leading the chase. Something stirs out in the shadowy wood. Let's uncover it together, just like we should. The team is geared up, the map is laid clear. We bring expert voices where the facts appear. We feature top names on this digital plane, from Meldrum's big theories to Strange Rich Strain. With Lyle Blackburn and Scott Violet online, we chase the elusive one sighting at a time. It's Sasquatch Watch Radio. Tune into the screen with Gary Kendrick, host of the same. He's heard the howls, he's seen the dark form, a true eyewitness leading the storm. Something is lurking out in the dark wood. Let's find it together, just like we should. We give you the legends, the truth laid raw, and a unique track for the tale of the law. So subscribe to the channel, heed the lead. We're planting knowledge, pulling up the weed. Yeah, Monday night, 9 Eastern, YouTube Live. Sasquatch Watch Radio, where the quest thrives.
Hey, everybody. You're watching Sasquatch Watch Radio. Today is Monday, December the 8th, 2025. And I'd just like to say it's a special day for us here at the Kendrick household. December the 8th, it's my son's birthday, my oldest son, KK. He just turned 33 today. Happy birthday, KK. We've got a great guest coming on tonight. He's running a little bit late, but he'll be here, I hope. I've not had a lot of luck here lately, but Brandon Gayheart. Brandon Gayheart goes by the moniker the Supernatural Sleuth. He's a law enforcement veteran, and I'm really excited to have Brandon on tonight because Brandon is probably the closest to where I live at of any guest that we've had on. Brandon basically lives on the other side of the mountain from where I live at in Kentucky. So hopefully we'll have some interesting conversation and some insight into some of the Appalachian weirdness that goes on around here, which, you know, I'm glad to see everybody on tonight. Let's see who we've got. We've got Bigfoot Balloon. How you doing, George? We've got, let's see, Hillary, 1971 WV. I'm assuming that that's West Virginia. Is that correct? Looking forward to tonight. Yeah, my oldest son, KK, he is Hawaiian. That's why he goes by KK. His real name is Gary Kealoha Ku'uwana. So that's why he goes by the name KK. What part of West Virginia are you from, Hillary? just outside of Charleston, South Carolina, or West Virginia. We go up to West Virginia about once a year to do some hunting. As you can see, my hog back there, that was last year's. We always have a good time up there. I really enjoy it. West Virginia, too, another hot spot for some of this Appalachia strangeness. About 20 miles up 79. I got in trouble when I worked for the Virginia Department of Corrections when I first started. It seemed like 100 years ago. It was back in 94. When we was going to training, we'd have to go to Richmond, Virginia. And we was working in Buchanan County, Virginia. And I would kind of duck through West Virginia a little bit with the state vehicle to save some time. It saved me about a half hour in the drive. There was probably, I think, 14 of us that went. So we took a big van. And I would duck through 77 a little bit through West Virginia to kind of shave some time off the drive. And when they found out what I was doing, they got a little upset over that. So, got to watch where you're at sometimes. Any sightings of Bigfoot around where you're at, Hillary? George, is there anything going on in New Mexico right now? Man, as I hate to say it, Virginia's been really dry as of late on sightings and new encounters and things. I think last year was probably the hottest year we've had in a while. There were several reports. And especially here where I live at, it's hard to get reports. People are kind of tight-lipped. We're going to give Brandon a few more minutes here. If there's any questions from anybody in the chat, please put them up anytime. We'll try to go over them as quick as we can. Several years ago. Let's see. Hillary says, I've heard about a few. Several years ago, but most people around here are closed-mouthed. Yeah. Unfortunately, where we live at here, throughout this section of Appalachia, things are pretty quiet. People usually don't try to talk about them. Of course, we live right in the heart of the Bible Belt, so a lot of people's religious convictions and things like that. And ridicule plays a big part too. People don't want to talk about it because they're afraid of being made fun of. I guess I'm kind of the oddball. If they're talking about me, they're letting somebody else rest, the way I look at it. George Garcia says the BFRO is having an expedition next year in New Mexico. That should be a good one. All right. Like we got Brandon here. We'll add him to the stage. Oh, Brandon.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, how are you?
Great. You hear me good?
Yeah. How about me? Am I good?
Excellent. Everything's coming through great. I was just telling the chat, I was really excited to have you on tonight. You are probably closest to where I live at of any guest that we've ever had on here. Pippa's Passes, is that correct?
Yeah, well, that's where I work. Yeah, it's not many people have heard of it, but it exists.
Basically, I live across the mountain from you guys.
Okay.
You ever heard of Clintwood?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I live in Clintwood.
Okay, yeah, I go to Norton Wise pretty regularly, so I'm pretty familiar.
Yeah, cool. Maybe I'll run into you up there sometime.
You never know.
Well, Brandon, we're going to get right into it, brother. I was telling him you're a law enforcement veteran. I believe currently you're a chief of police. Is that correct?
Well, I'm a director of public safety at a college here in where I live.
Sweet. The Supernatural Sleuth. You have a big following on TikTok.
I've been very blessed. Yeah. I have 4 platforms: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And all those combined, I think I'm up to around 1.4 million now. So I've been very blessed with it.
Yes, you have. That is awesome. That is awesome. And we'll hop right into it. Brandon,
yes,
tell us what got you into Sasquatch. I know you do a lot of the supernatural stuff, but what got you into Sasquatch?
Well, most of my life, well, pretty much all my life, I've been interested in the paranormal, ghost, whatever. But my best friend actually is what really got me into Bigfoot, cryptids, and all that. His name is Zach Hall, and I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show Expedition Bigfoot.
Yes, sir.
Uh, but he was Russell Acord's cameraman for about 3 years, the first 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of drew me into that world, and I since became good friends with Russell and been on investigations with him and some of the other cast of Expedition Bigfoot. But I don't know, it was kind of like a whole new world opened up to me with cryptids. Probably about 4 or 5, 6 years ago, when mainly I had just been kind of focused on hauntings, ghosts, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Which, I've spoke about this before on the show too. There's a big rift in the Bigfoot community as far as paranormal and animal and supernatural and all this other stuff. By nature, just by the pure definition of paranormal, Sasquatch is a paranormal thing because it's outside of the realm of known science.
Right.
So, that's something that a lot of people play into, but I'm kind of torn, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. But the first thing I want to talk about is something that I have grown up with my whole life, and it's you do a brilliant job talking about it.
Thank you.
Is the unwritten rules of Appalachia.
I talk about that a lot. I do.
If you could get into it just a little bit, explain some of them. One of my favorites is the "don't whistle at night" thing.
Right. Yeah. That is a big one. So yeah, I mean, I've like a lot of
Can
people
you hear
here
me?
in yeah, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But yeah, so the rules
Yes,
of
sir.
Appalachia, a lot of it stems from folklore, things handed down from great grandparents. But some people swear by those. The don't whistle in the woods one, that is a very popular one. And I think my belief is that when you're out in the mountains and you start whistling, something's out there that might whistle back. I believe there are things out there just looking for attention, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
through whistling or actually trying to verbally communicate. Um, and I think that by doing so, that some of these entities, whatever they may be, kind of think of that as an invitation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's an interesting one, and I actually just done one um, a few days ago on YouTube. I'm just now kind of getting into YouTube. I think I'm up to like 37,000 followers. But why do you close your curtains at night in Appalachia? That one's got like 140 some thousand views, and there's a lot of scary things out there, some natural, some supernatural. But I do personally know people who swear by it. They will not go to bed at night without pulling their blinds or closing their curtains.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing growing up too.
Right.
But yeah, there's all kinds of them that you went over, and a lot of them deal pretty closely with a lot of Sasquatch behavior, like the whistling.
Right.
Bigfoot will whistle at night.
Sure.
The baby crying is probably the strangest one that I've ever heard. I've never heard the baby crying in the woods. I've heard my name before.
Right.
I've heard people talking, what I thought was people talking, and there's nobody there.
Yeah, me too.
The baby crying is probably the strangest. And I've never experienced that, but they say if you play audio of a baby crying, that you will have all kinds of Bigfoot activity right after that.
That may be something I have to try. But yeah, that is a strange one. And I always found that to be kind of maybe the more twisted of all the rules because, anytime you bring children or babies into the equation, that just kind of adds a whole new level of strange, and I don't know, just something's not right about it. And my belief is with a lot of the paranormal stuff is that it's demonic in nature,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that as human beings, that whenever we hear a baby crying or a child in distress, our natural instinct is to go look for that child or that baby.
Yep.
So that plays on our human emotions to try to lure us deeper into the mountains, maybe.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's that, like I said, that one's pretty weird. That
It
that one
is.
gets that one really does.
Yeah.
This is a really weird question, and I try to ask all of my guests this because this kind of puts me into the headspace of the guest that I'm talking to. And I'll
Sure.
explain the question as I go. The question is animal, mineral, or vegetable? Animal, do you
Huh.
believe that Bigfoot is a living, breathing animal? Mineral, do you believe that it may be extraterrestrial or interdimensional? Or vegetable, do you believe that it's spiritual? Or it could be a combination of any, just whatever your opinion is.
I personally believe a combination of animal and vegetable. I believe that there is probably a biological flesh and blood Bigfoot that is bipedal, kind of like an ape or something. But you hear Bigfoot encounters where people say it's like they can, be here one minute and over here the next. They move like a spiritual being. I don't know any flesh and blood creature that can time warp, or jump from, a quarter mile away in a matter of a second. So I think they're both. I think there are entities that will manifest as Sasquatch or Bigfoot, just trying to manipulate people.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good answer. That is a really good answer.
Well, thank you.
And I know you have all kinds of Bigfoot stories, which I want to get into them here in just a minute. But I want to bring up a photo, and then I want you to tell us about. And I have lost the dead burn photo.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens to me all the time. I swear it does.
Me too, bro.
Technology is not my friend.
Sometimes it's definitely not mine either. I can definitely relate.
And I don't know how in the world I've lost that. But anyway, it's a photo of what appears to be a black being holding a coyote by the throat. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure where the picture originated. Someone sent it to me. I literally get hundreds of messages and emails every day, so a lot of times it's hard for me to keep up with them. But what I do remember is this person had experienced some. It gets kind of mixed. Some people say Sasquatch, Bigfoot, others say Dogman type things on his little farm, like animals would go missing. He'd seen, quick things moving out of his peripheral vision. Never could get a solid look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But he did capture this thing one night on his property. You could tell the picture's kind of hard to make a lot of detail, but this creature, whatever it was standing beside of his outbuilding, his shed. And you can see the coyote is off the ground a couple feet or so. And his outbuilding, his shed, he said was at least 8 feet tall. And this creature is equal to, if not taller than that. And it clearly looks to me like it has it by the throat, holding it midair.
Mm-hmm. In the photo, which I have it pulled up on my phone here, which that doesn't do the audience any good.
Right.
But in the photo itself, you can actually make out the outline of whatever this animal is that's holding this coyote, and it is massively wide. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
actually is darker than the surroundings. That's how you can make it out so well.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it does have a lot of the typical Bigfoot look to it with the no neck and
Right.
things like that. But I wish I could bring that up. Man, I hate that. That's a good
Yeah,
photo too. That one was spooky.
yeah, it was that one. I noticed the same things you just described when someone sent it to me. And like I said, I get dozens and dozens of pictures and videos every day, and it takes me a while to go through them. Some of them you can tell are fake or AI generated, and I try to, eliminate those the best I can. But when I seen this one, I don't know. I just got a feeling like I believe this was legit,
Yeah.
and like you said, you can, if you pay attention, you can see this thing is massive, whatever it is, like a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.
Oh yeah. And like I said, you've got some really interesting Bigfoot encounters that you talk about on your channel.
Right.
Can you tell us about the Bigfoot encounter in the Smoky Mountains where it actually entered someone's home?
Yeah, that's a really strange one. That one happened, I think, in the late summer of last year, or so of 2024. It was told to me, yeah. So this family had bought a farm, small farm, somewhere in the Smoky Mountain, East Tennessee area. And they had just been there a few weeks. And the mother was the first one to discover out around the barn some ginormous, like, footprints. Too big to be a man, definitely not an animal, but she didn't put a lot of thought into it. Maybe it was just a freakishly big black bear. Even though she kind of didn't really believe that, I guess she just felt better telling herself that. So she had seen that a few times around the barn. Fast forward a few weeks, she is home alone with her young daughter, and they're in the upstairs of the house. They're still getting settled in, unpacking their stuff, and getting situated. And, if you're like me, you're from the mountains, especially during the day, you kind of leave your door open. You don't think about burglars or whatever. So she just had her screen door was shut. And as they're upstairs working, they hear the door open, thinking initially it was probably her husband or some family member. So they kind of walk over to the edge of the stairs and look down, and they can hear the footsteps walking to their field of vision. And in walks what they described as a juvenile Sasquatch, 4 to 5 feet tall, reddish brown, long, shaggy hair, but not the ginormous Bigfoot that we think of. And she and her daughter are just in awe of this creature standing at the bottom of their steps, and they're frozen in fear, not really knowing what to do. And then they hear the door open again. They hear the footsteps, this time heavier walk, and this time a Bigfoot that probably 7 to 8 feet tall. Looks very similar as far as the color, brownish red hair. They walk in, stand around, and this mother and daughter at this point are just in a panic, but they know not to move because they don't know what would happen. So they just stare at these creatures, and they said they made just kind of like guttural noises, growls or groans and moans. Just kind of looked around until they eventually turned around and went back out the front door. They waited a few minutes to make sure nothing else came in. They ran downstairs, got the car keys, and left. So, yeah, that was a very interesting one.
Yeah, that is. I don't think I've ever heard an account of Sasquatch entering like an occupied home.
Right.
I have
Yeah,
heard
that
people say they've seen them go into abandoned houses and things, but never one that was occupied.
right. Yeah, that was the first one I had heard. And again, I don't know this person personally, but it was told to me by someone who allegedly did know this family. Um, and it was actually floating around TikTok and social media by a few other people telling that story. But I believe it's true. I mean, and again, I can't confirm anything, but people that was commenting on that video say they had actually heard of other accounts of Bigfoot entering homes, occupied homes. Whereas
Mhm.
I'm like you, I had never heard that before.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say the Smoky Mountains, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, even up around Cherokee, North Carolina, there's a
Mhm.
lot of strange things that happen up there. I heard an account one time up near Klingman's Dome
Yeah.
of some, I think they were college students that were like volunteering with the Rangers. And there was a
Yeah.
couple that, father and a son that was going to go hiking. There was a big snowstorm that hit.
Mhm.
Well, the mother and the wife was worried, so she called the Rangers. So they went up to look for them.
Right.
Well, they got up and the snow was bad. I mean, it was pouring.
Right.
And they got up to a Ranger's cabin and they got radio contact that the father and son had made it home. They started to hike, saw that it was snowing and had left. And, the mother had just panicked.
Right.
So they were going to spend the night in this cabin up there. And they heard footsteps all the way around the cabin. And they said all night long, something was going around smacking the side of the cabin and things like that.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's a lot of activity up there. And it makes sense, too, because there is a huge, the Smoky Mountain National Park, Cherokee National Forest, and all that right there together.
Yeah.
And that is huge swath of forest land.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah,
So, yeah, there's
that's
a lot of strange activity.
yeah, when my social media first kind of blew up, it's because I started sharing stories out of the Smoky Mountain. The Smokies is the number one visited national park within the United States. But after I began thinking about it, people started sending me stories and things like that. What better place for Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or any cryptid or whatever than a protected area like that? No hunters. It's you have rangers that keep people like that out, and it's massive. And
Oh, yeah.
there's places that probably haven't seen humans and who knows how long. And I don't know if you're familiar with the feral people that allegedly live in the Smokies. That one I've thought to be very interesting.
I've read some
Um,
stories on it, and I've seen quite a bit of, accounts of people running into feral people. And
right.
it's interesting.
It is.
Uh, it kind of leads you to think that, you know, if you're going to live out in the wild like that, that would be like one of the perfect places to do it
Definitely.
because you have the cover. There's not a lot of people in there. Especially during off seasons,
True.
winter and things like
Right.
that. So yeah, that's interesting. And then sometimes I think too that maybe it might be some misidentified stuff because you get a lot of reports. Oh, it was completely covered in mud
Right.
and things like that. And even people that live wild, we had lots of Native Americans and things.
Sure.
And there was a few that did things like that, but it was during the summers and things for bugs.
Right. Right.
So, I don't know, maybe they're misidentifying. Maybe they saw a juvenile Sasquatch and just thought it was, a feral human. The possibilities are endless up there.
Oh,
And
definitely. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Well, Brandon, if you remember, I sent you a message and I asked you what kind of music you liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope this one will suit you, but we make all of our guests a song. So I'm going to go ahead and play your song for you.
Oh, awesome. Absolutely.
If I can get this thing to play, I swear.
From the green hills of Ohio to the deep river bend, where Kentucky and West Virginia's forests extend, there's a man in the shadows, not chasing the hype, but seeking the truth in the dead of the night. Brandon Gayheart is a name that they speak, a serious investigator, dedicated, not weak. He walks through the lowlands where the foliage is dense, gathering evidence with a careful defense. He's a man of the river valley, with his recorder in hand, documenting the mystery across the tri-state land. It's the audio evidence, the knock and the cry, the Sasquatch vocalizations beneath the dark sky. He's a field researcher who sees past the tale, focused on data where the human senses fail. He believes in the science, the pattern and trace, seeking the logic of the elusive race. He studies the markings, the breaks in the wood, the tracks on the ground where the creature has stood. He charts habituation areas, quiet and deep, where the behavioral patterns the forest will keep. He shares the accounts, the encounters he's known, the truth that the wilderness has carefully shown. He's not swayed by the skeptics, the scoffers who sneer. He holds to the findings he collects year by year. You can find him online when the darkness has grown. On the famous Sasquatch Chronicles, the secrets are sown. He speaks of his method, his data points clear, bringing research and findings for the listener to hear. It's a scientific approach to a long-held folklore, demanding respect and demanding much more. He's the man of the river valley, with his recorder in hand, documenting the mystery across the tri-state land. It's the audio evidence, the knock and the cry, the Sasquatch vocalizations beneath the dark sky. He's a field researcher who sees past the tale, focused on data where the human senses fail. He believes in the science, the pattern and trace, seeking the logic of the elusive race. He's mapping the silence, he's tracking the beat, the secrets of the forest beneath his tired feet. Brandon Gayheart is watching, still searching the hollows for the creature that follows the Ohio River.
That's great.
Children, I tell you what, that was a good one. That one was heavy. That was a heavy song. That was good.
That was really good. That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was really good.
Brandon, I'm gonna get into some more stories here that you collected.
Sure.
I know your former chief, his mother had an encounter, I think back in the 50s with Bigfoot. If you don't care, can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, sure. And this is one, like I said, a lot of these stories I can't confirm. I don't know the people who tell them to me, but this one, I believe 1,000% is true. So, yeah, as you said, my former boss, the chief of police, his mother, she unfortunately passed away about 6-7 years ago. I think she was 99. But she was the quintessential old sweet church lady that wouldn't harm a fly, probably hadn't told a lie in her life, or at least not the last 60 years. But she told this story until the day she died. When she was younger, this would have been in the late 1950s, this happened to her neighbor, but she did witness this. So according to her, this family, back then homes were sometimes half mile apart or more, and but allegedly her neighbor, he had a family. The dad had been outside most of the day chopping firewood, and as the sun set and everyone went inside and they had supper and getting ready to settle down, they heard something come up on the porch. Now, today it's not really that uncommon. If somebody comes up on my porch, I think it's my dad, my brother, or a family member, not a big deal. But, back then, people didn't show up at your house randomly at night, especially when your closest neighbor's a quarter to a half mile away. So they hear something walk up on the porch. They expect to hear a knock at the door, but they don't. Instead, this thing just kind of walks the length of the porch, kind of back and forth. And, so they're kind of, getting a little concerned at this point, not knowing, maybe it's an animal, but it sounds like a man. So the dad gets up and goes to the door and tells his family to be quiet so he can listen. He slowly opens the door and peeks out, and he doesn't see anything at first. Then he looks to the other side, and he said, standing there, he described it like an ape. Back then, Bigfoot wasn't really a word, especially here. But this big hairy creature was standing there, and they locked eyes. And I'm not exactly sure what happened, if this creature made some kind of advancement toward him or what, but the axe was still by the door that he had used earlier to chop firewood. And so he picked this axe up and killed this creature. Not knowing what he killed, really. And, this is well after dark. But the next day, he left it on the porch. He got up. I guess he had, went to the neighbors, told them. He went to town, which was a pretty good ways off. Told the sheriff, went to the health department, told them what had happened. And he went back home. But later that day, the sheriff and the health department did show up. And they didn't know what it was. Again, ape was the closest thing they knew, but there are no apes in eastern Kentucky. So they said they would contact someone and they'd be back in touch. I think maybe even, I don't know if there were game wardens, or I don't even know if they were here at that time. But anyway, the next day, people showed up, suits, said they worked for the government, didn't say what branch of the government or anything like that. They loaded this creature up and they told him when they figured out what it was, they'd let him know, but more than likely it was some type of ape or monkey. But that's the last he ever heard. He never heard nothing else. But this lady, my chief's mother, she's seen this creature. And it is today what we would call Bigfoot. But yeah, I believe that 1,000%. And I know we're at the location where this happened.
Yeah,
And
it's one of my favorite encounter stories that you talk about.
yeah, and
it rings truth. That's not a story that somebody from the 1950s is going to make up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because Bigfoot isn't, there was no, I don't even know that the term or the word Bigfoot or Sasquatch existed, at least here. I don't think it did anyway. But they didn't know what to call it other than an ape or ape-like creature. And, and this, like I said, this little lady was, what you would think the perfect old church lady would be. And my chief, he's in his 60s, and he said his whole life she told that story to be true up until she passed away.
Yeah, like I said, that's one of my favorites. That's a really interesting encounter.
It really was.
Bringing up the fact, names, Bigfoot, things like that. There's all kinds of names out there. You've got the Alabama white things. That gets talked about a lot. And it's not just in Alabama, too. Texas has quite a few sightings of white things. Down in Texas, they call them no-necks. You know, Norton has the wood booger. There's all kinds of different names, and a lot of them are regional names. One was a chicken man. I think that was from down in Tennessee, where they had saw Bigfoot stealing their chickens. And, you know, boogers. Everybody in Appalachia has heard of boogers.
Oh,
you know, that booger's going to get you. That booger's going to get you.
Definitely.
And, you know, with all of these names for it, they all basically come back to the same thing. And I think at the core of it, they're all talking about one thing. But one of the things that you talk about on your show, I think you call it the Appalachian Walker. Does that sound right?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, I think, like you said, at its core, it's a Bigfoot, Sasquatch type creature. You know, a lot of these stories and things originated like the other story did decades ago, before people knew what to call it. So they would just call it what made sense to them, an Appalachian Walker or, you know, something like that. And, you know, I've heard stories of, you know, back in the olden days, you know, coal mining used to be huge, as it was where you're from. But, you know, I can remember hearing my great grandpa talk about walking to the mines. You know, they didn't have a car. They would walk, you know, 2-3 miles, whatever it was, to the mine. And either on their way to work or on their way back home at dark, they run into creatures that they didn't know how to explain, other than just some kind of walker or hairy creature or booger, like you said. And, you know, a lot of stories that I've heard personally and people have told me, emailed me or sent me a DM, is something along those lines. You know, someone 50, 60, 70 years ago encountered something walking to work or school or whatever it may have been, and they encountered something they didn't know what it was. You know, you got to think, especially in Appalachia, you know, 60, 70 years ago, there wasn't as many people. You definitely didn't have the internet. Phones were limited. So, you know, we have this plethora of knowledge now. We can access things across the world in a second. Back then, that wasn't a thing. You know, you had a library at best. And so people encountered things they just didn't know what it was. So they made up their own names for it.
Oh, yeah. And they're out there, too. I mean, there's regional names in every state, every community that you go to for these things. And it's really interesting, too. And, you know, I know you do the most of your research here in Appalachia. You know, Eastern Kentucky, Southwest Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, places like that. And a lot of people don't realize this. Appalachia is a huge place.
Oh, yeah.
And it's mostly forested. You know, there's a lot of stuff in this area. And one thing that people forget, you know, and I'm guilty of it too, I always kind of believed that Bigfoot was a real thing. And I always kind of thought it was a out west type of thing.
Right.
And I never really thought of it being, you know, an East Coast thing until I had my own encounter in 2006. And it kind of hit me, you know, these things are like everywhere.
Right.
And Appalachia is a really, really old place.
Yep.
And when you get into like, I'm a hunter, and I really enjoy my time outside. I hunt, I fish, you know, all this stuff. I do a lot of camping. And when here in Appalachia, when you go outside and it gets dark, brother, it is dark.
Oh, yeah.
You know, street lights are limited. If you're in the forest, you know, you've got to be moving.
Right. That's right.
To get out before dark, because if you don't get out before dark, it can be a chore getting to your vehicle.
Oh, yeah, it's darker than dark.
Yeah. And, you know, with that being said, where do you think throughout Appalachia in your research area is the best place for Bigfoot?
Well, like you, I- almost identically, growing up, the Pacific Northwest is where I thought Bigfoot lived. Washington, Oregon, Northern California. But as I began to investigate things, I learned, just as you did, that Appalachia and pretty much all over the country, there have been Bigfoot spotting or sightings. And but I will say what I have uncovered and people that I've talked to right here, our little hub, like where you live, where I live, Eastern Kentucky, Southwest Virginia, East Tennessee, Western North Carolina, seems to be like what I have discovered the hub of Bigfoot and a lot of just paranormal stuff in general.
Yeah, and realistically, Appalachia, like I said, it is so old that I think there
Right.
is a lot of residual stuff
Right.
here.
Right. Yeah.
Like Virginia says that mountain lions don't exist in the state of Virginia.
Hmm.
I've seen 3.
Yeah. I seen a panther when I was in high school. The game warden told my dad I was lying, but I looked at it clear as I see you right now.
Yeah,
No, it's
it's
been 25 years ago.
yeah. I seen a black one, and I had a game biologist tell me that they couldn't be black.
They told me I was lying. Well, I guess it's been 30 years ago, but I watched it as plain as I'm watching TV. I know what
Yeah,
I seen. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm like you. I mean, there are things out there like the mountains. If I'm not mistaken, Appalachia is, I think, the oldest mountain range in the world.
yes, sir.
And it goes from the southern part of the U.S. all the way up to the northern part of the U.S. But for one, and I think pretty much all of that area has a lot of activity. But I think this hub right here, Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, seems to have it all.
Yeah, and I try to stick to Bigfoot on the show because it is a Bigfoot show after
Right,
all.
right,
And but I mean, it's not just Bigfoot. You've got the Mothman. You've
right,
got all sorts of haunted places here.
right.
Gatlinburg is like one of the most haunted places around.
It is.
Uh, and then there is so much history in this area that has kind of been glazed over as far as Native American history
Right,
and Civil War history.
right,
You read about all the big battles that took place, like in Pennsylvania and places like that. But Pound Gap, Virginia, which is the
mhm,
border between Virginia and Kentucky, was a
right.
really highly contested area during the Civil War because it led into Saltville. That was the only road that went to Saltville. So it
Okay.
changed hands between the Confederate states and the northern states probably 10 or 12 times. But there's
Right,
so much stuff here, it's hard to just nail it down to, it's one thing. I
right,
don't think it is just one thing. I think there's so much stuff here
right,
that it just can't be nailed down to one thing. Uh,
right,
and as far as cryptids go, like I said, you got the Mothman. There's Dogman sightings in Kentucky.
mm,
There's Lord, I'm trying to think now. Uh, Thunderbird sightings. Lots of Thunderbird sightings around.
right,
I actually see something here that I cannot explain. It's
right.
way bigger than a vulture. It
Hmm.
doesn't look like the typical turkey vultures or black vultures. It's way bigger,
Right.
and it has the naked neck and head, but it has a ring of black feathers around its neck, and its wingspan is probably, I don't know, 8 feet, 10 feet.
Oh
It is
wow.
huge, and
Yeah,
I've seen it 6 or 8 times, and I can't explain what it is.
that's freaky, but I don't doubt that because I mean, again, like you said, Appalachia. I mean, the ocean. We've only what is it? I can't even remember. Is it what 10% of the world's oceans they've has only been researched or discovered? And I kind of feel like that about Appalachia. It's so massive. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that live in Appalachia, but these mountains, and especially in some regions, parts of Appalachia, the mountains are so steep and it's so rugged that most people just don't go there. But
Yeah, it is.
what yeah, and what's beyond those rough places, we have most people have no idea.
No, and like I said, uh, here in Appalachia, you have places like the old song about Harlan, you'll never leave Harlan alive. The sun comes up at 10 o'clock in the morning and goes down at 3 o'clock in the day. Everybody thinks that's just a lyrical thing that they threw in there. But realistically, when you sit between these mountains, the sun does not hit in places.
Oh, yeah.
There's places that are almost completely in shadows, year round.
Yeah.
And there's some hollers that are so deep. And I know that not everybody here is from Appalachia, so I'll explain a little bit. A hollow is where you have a mountain on each side, and it's like a low valley between the two. That's all it is. That's what we call a holler.
Yeah.
And when you get into some of these hollers, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And there's no telling what you're going to come up on.
Yeah.
Especially here lately, with the drug problems and things that we have. I know you work law enforcement, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But when you're investigating, whether it's ghosts or it's cryptids or Bigfoot or whatever, what protective measures do you have?
Well, I think the most important thing, about me in general is I'm a devout Christian. My faith is key to everything. So, I pray daily for protection, guidance, understanding, discernment. But before I go on any kind of investigation, I ask for protection, for God to go with me, to keep me safe from whatever's out there, natural or unnatural. And, that's like I said, when it comes to Bigfoot specifically, I do believe there is a animal, biological Bigfoot, very elusive, highly intelligent. But I do think, just on my end, I believe those are real, but I believe that the demons can manifest as a Bigfoot. The ones that you hear stories of, it's like they went through a portal or something. They were here, then they were here. I don't know any kind of flesh and blood creature that can do that. So I always feel that there is a spiritual aspect involved. So I try to stay spiritually in the right place, even though I don't all the time. But I think prayer and faith is the key, best thing that I have utilized. I have a ton of ghost hunting equipment and all that gadgety stuff, but at the end of the day, my faith and prayer is the most important.
Yes, sir. I completely agree with you. I really do. It's hard to say, really. I say this to kind of make a point. It's hard to say what Sasquatch really is, because nobody is an expert. We have a lot of people that think they are.
Right.
But until science has one on the table and we know what they are,
right,
how they exist, how they live, what their body makeup is, and all this other stuff, we'll never really know what they are.
Right.
And the natives had a big, spiritual influence when it comes to like Sasquatch or some of these other entities that are out there. I've heard you talk, and this is old Appalachian stuff, and I'm sorry if you don't understand what I'm talking about, but the Wampus cat. You've got like the deer woman and all these other things. And we have reports here on the East Coast too of things that are pretty much what you would believe only be out west, like the skinwalkers,
right,
and things like that. And when you get into the field of study, I think it's important to realize that you're not an expert. You're there to learn. That's the thing. We're all still trying to learn, and every day is a new experience. Absolutely. And it seems to me like, and I've been doing this for a pretty good while. I had my encounter in 2006, and I really started researching and things like that. I started studying this stuff when I was a kid. I was probably 10 or 12 years old, but I really started researching after I had my encounter. And whenever I think I have something answered, then I find that I was wrong, and there's like 500 more questions that need answering.
Right.
And I'm sure you come up with the same thing. But in your ghost hunting stuff, have you ever come across a situation to where what you believed might have been and here I go putting labels on it, a paranormal incident that turned out to be something like Sasquatch.
Well, like I said, I've been investigating paranormal stuff for probably a little over 25 years. And like I said, probably the last 5 or 6 is when I've really got into cryptids and Bigfoot. Um, I've never had a Bigfoot encounter. I had one encounter that I believed could have been some kind of cryptid or Bigfoot, maybe. It was probably, oh man, probably close to 20 years ago now. Um, for most of my life, my family every year, we would go deer hunting in Western Kentucky. We have some friends down there who own some farms. We would go down there, 10, 12, 15 of us. I mean, we were serious about hunting, but it was more about the trip, just getting away for a few days and spending time together. But there was one section of that was a swamp. Well, that's what we just called it, the swamp. And me and just a couple of my friends are the only ones who really hunted there because it was nasty, very thick, easy to get turned around, just level, wet, swampy terrain. And one day, I'll never forget it, me and one of my good buddies, we was way through this swamp on our four-wheelers. And it was right in the middle of the day, probably 1:30. And we started making our way back out. And we had to drive right by where my tree stand was. And I said, I'm going to stop here for a while. I'm just going to get back in my tree stand and hunt probably till dark. And my buddy goes on to get in his tree stand, which was probably, I don't know, a tenth of a mile away. But, in this thick swamp, you can't see nothing anyway. And so I'm sitting on my four-wheeler. He goes on. He goes out of sight. Back then, I smoked. I lit up a cigarette, and I thought I'm going to have me a cigarette before I get up my tree stand. And as I'm sitting there on my four-wheeler, I hear something in front of me. The best way I can describe it, it's like a guttural growl. And I'm trying to look. I don't see anything. Then I hear it over here on my right side. Then it's on my left side. Then it's behind me. And before I know it, it's all around me, just these deep, guttural moans or growls. And so I'm sitting there looking at my tree stand, which is about 15 feet away. I'm sitting on my four-wheeler, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Because there is clearly something surrounding me. And I don't know, should I get up in my tree stand or should I leave? And I just keep, at this point, I always have a pistol with me too. I had my pistol. And I'm trying to, wait for something to charge me. But I finally just I'm not comfortable here. I'm leaving. So I just left. And the day goes on, and when it gets dark, my buddy comes back out. And I start telling him about what happened. And he said, I heard that too. And he said that whatever, he described the same noise that I heard, but he said around his tree stand, he heard it.
Oh, wow.
But one reason I think maybe Bigfoot is because my cousin, who actually lives just right down below me, he's older. He's in his 60s, but he's kind of more like an uncle to me. Like I've grown up around him all my life. He's very close to him. He's one of these serious hunters. He takes it really serious. He'll sit in his tree stand from before daylight till dark. But that same area, he said this happened again around that same time period. He's sitting in his tree stand, middle of the day, beautiful sunny day, just looking around, how you do, just slowly turning your head. And he said out of a cedar thicket, just to his right, I believe, this huge brownish red Bigfoot comes out of this cedar thicket and is walking to his right. And he, had never seen a Bigfoot, didn't even believe in Bigfoot. And he sat there for a minute, we had his rifle, it didn't seem aggressive. I don't even know if it seen him. I'm sure it did. but it never acknowledged him. But he said he watched this thing walk out of that cedar thicket and back into another big pine thicket just off to his right. And like I said, this was all in the same area. And he swears today that and I believe him 1,000%.
Y'all excuse me, I've had a cold and it's a whipping my tail right now.
I have too, but I have too. You're good, brother.
This stuff's about to wipe me out. I know you do like a lot of stuff, paranormal, cryptids, and all this other stuff.
Uh-huh.
Of all the things that you investigate, and I'm talking about ghosts, paranormal, everything, what do you believe are the realest encounters? What do you think is like the most real?
Oh. Well, I mean, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. I can just speak for people, for instance, like my cousin who knows and swears with his hand on the Bible that he's seen Bigfoot. I believe 1,000% he's seen Bigfoot. Me, I've had multiple encounters with what we would call ghosts that I believe are actually demonic in nature. That was real to me. So, it's hard for me to say that one's more real than the other. It's just, individual experiences. I think, like you're into Bigfoot. You said you encountered Bigfoot, what, in 2006, was it?
Yes, sir.
That was I'm sure that was very real to you. That's something you'll never forget, as long as you live. I guess my biggest question is, and this past summer, I spoke at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Convention in Gatlinburg. And that's one thing when I was standing on stage, I said, to me, the question is Bigfoot real? It's not that. The question is, what is Bigfoot? I think most of the people in that place believe Bigfoot was real because I would say 90% of them had encounters. But my question, that's where I'm at in my journey. Not is Bigfoot real, but what is Bigfoot? Is it one thing? Is it two things? Or a different thing? Like you said, is it an animal? Is it a vegetable? Is it a whatever? That's where I'm at in my journey,
And with that being said, I have two theories that I'm stuck between the two as to what it is. And like you said, I can only base it on my experiences, what I have experienced, what I have seen, things like that. I think that possibly it is some type of pre-human, almost like a caveman, if you want to say that, or whatever, some type of pre-human, or it's some type of, unknown ape species that has never been encountered. And those two things, when I say that, they're really similar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, that being said, with them being very similar, there is a vast difference between the two.
Sure.
Like one of the things that I say on the show all the time, and people listen to the show all the time probably get sick of me talking about it, but is I see a lot of intelligence in Sasquatch.
Right.
But I don't see any human intelligence in Sasquatch. I don't see any fire use. I don't see any. And when I say tool use, I don't mean just like a random tool. They pick up a rock and use a rock for something. That's a tool. But they're not manufacturing tools. They're not chipping that rock to make something else out of it. They're not shaping that stick to make something else out of it.
Right.
So, I'm kind of stuck between those two. But then again, too, it could be something completely different than that. Because I don't have one tied up down here at the barn that I go down here every day and mess with and see what it's doing and all this other stuff.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
Have you had any encounters with people that have had habituation type situations with Sasquatch or any other cryptid?
I think I've heard stories like maybe on YouTube or something. I've not really nothing close or personal that I know of with that really. I do, YouTube, TikTok, it's right there on our phone. So, I watch and try to research and hear other people's stories and, you hear a lot of things, but um, you know, one thing with me that's it was easy in the beginning to keep up with. People emails me and sends me messages. I literally get hundreds every day. Like if you look at my inbox, there are hundreds that I've never opened just because I don't have the time. And it takes me weeks, months to go through all of them. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I get excited when I do get a minute to sit down because, you know, some of them not so great, but every now and then you come across either a story, a video, a picture that really resonates. You know, like, oh yeah, that I believe that. You know, you can tell. Like when people have a legit story, like a true encounter, 9 times out of 10, like you can just tell in their demeanor. You know, the way they word stuff, the way they act, and so I get excited when I do get a chance to sit down and actually read through a lot of my emails and comments. Um, but yeah, there's some interesting ones out there. And you know what? I first thought of a minute ago when you said you thought maybe, you know, Bigfoot could be like a caveman type person, human. You know, that might even tie into the feral people thing. People
Mm-hmm.
see this kind of looks like a man, but don't. So, you know, I could see where the confusion might be. You know, it was a person, but it was dark or it was hairy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that makes a lot of sense to me. I hadn't actually hadn't really ever considered that, but that's a good something to think about.
I mean, like with my own encounter, I was like really close to the Bigfoot. It actually stepped out in the road in front of my Jeep Wrangler,
Oh wow,
and it was. Oh, I had to slam on the brakes to keep from hitting it.
really?
Yeah, so it was probably about 3 feet from where I was sitting at. It was probably close to, if not maybe touching the bumper of my Jeep.
Wow.
And its face I was, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I just turned 56 the other day.
Mm,
And I grew up watching the Patterson Gimlin film and In Search of and things like that.
right,
And I had in my head that it would be this huge, like the Patterson Gimlin film, ape
sure,
looking thing.
right,
But what walked across the road in front of me, I mean, was massive, probably more massive than anything I've ever seen. But
right,
its facial features were more human than they were ape.
right.
And they were, to say that they were more human than they were ape, I can narrow it down even more than that. They looked almost Native American. The
Okay,
cheekbones. The one that I saw was the kind of cinnamon brown color,
right,
and even its skin was like a dark brown.
okay,
You'll hear a lot of them say, "Oh, its skin was ashy gray or it was black or whatever." This one even had like the really tan skin look.
okay,
And like I said, I couldn't get over, the shape of the nose, even though it was really broad and really flat. It had almost like the Native American style nose,
right,
uh, uh, pug nose or whatever you want to call it.
right.
Uh, and I'm part Native American myself. I'm Shawnee and Cherokee mixed.
Okay,
I'm Shawnee and Cherokee on my dad's side of the family, and I'm Cherokee on my mother's side of the family.
okay,
And I've read a lot of native stories and things like that where they talk about Sasquatch.
sure.
And there's even stories of Bigfoot taking Indian women and having offspring with them.
I've heard something about that a little bit. I don't know much about it, but I have heard that.
So
Uh,
it's really interesting. When you get into it, how similar they are to us, but how vastly different. And as humans, we have pareidolia where we kind of assign faces to things.
right,
And when you see a face, the human body is wired to see faces,
right.
and I think a lot of that leads into a lot of the sightings that people have.
Yeah,
Like with the feral people, like I said, I
right,
think they see kind of what they want to see. You know what I'm saying, or
right,
what their mind
right,
can focus on. But
right.
now the feral people, especially around the Great Smoky Mountains, is a really really interesting subject.
It is.
Uh,
It
I'd,
really
I'd
is.
like to do some more study into that.
It's really interesting. I wasn't even all that familiar with it until I started the social media because, like I said, I'd always just kind of focused on hauntings, ghosts, those type of things. But when I started really researching the Smokies, was really like my first big kind of breakthrough moment, if you will, like on social media, because so many people go there, and I began to hear not just ghost stories. I'd heard some, but I heard ghost stories. I started hearing Bigfoot stories, dogman stories, mothman stories, and feral people. I was like, what's feral people? Then people started sending me their stories, and I've even shared stories, and I can't say for sure they're, factual, but of park rangers encountering feral people and Bigfoot and things like that. So there's something out there.
Yeah, there definitely is. And like I said too, just the amount of land
Right.
is incredible. I mean, if we took
Yeah.
every Bigfoot researcher on the West Coast and set them down in the Great Smoky Mountains, they wouldn't be able to see each other.
No.
And that's what we're dealing with. And you take a handful of people like me and you, and we go to these places to look, and it is truly a needle in a haystack.
No, definitely. Yeah.
So,
Most of my encounters, paranormal in general, I can go out here, I could go up in the mountains behind my house tonight. More than likely, I'm not going to see or hear anything other than deer or bear or something like that. But it's those times when you're not looking for it that you find it. In my experiences, it's you're just doing some mundane thing, not thinking about it. Maybe you're hunting or fishing, your mind's on that, or, you're walking through a house and, you hear a door slam, you're not thinking about ghosts. That's when it seems like it happens more often than not, in my
mhm,
experience. You know,
mhm, I'll agree. And it's the same way too with a lot of Bigfoot research. The more
yeah,
mundane things that you're doing, like if you're in like a normal camping situation,
sure,
I feel that you have a better chance of having an encounter than would
right,
be if you're actively out there, you know, looking for it.
right,
And I've found tracks, I've had visual sightings, I've had rocks thrown at me and things like that.
mhm,
And one of the strangest things that's happened, and it kind of plays into the paranormal too, is in a place in Virginia here in Spotsylvania County where we did some pretty serious research, and that place was hot. Every time we went there, we had Bigfoot activity.
right,
Summer, spring, fall, I don't care when it was, there was activity. And we had
right,
screams, footprints, tree knocks. We saw something run across a field one night and couldn't nail down what it was. But I mean,
right,
and one of the strangest things that we observed there was orbs, these
right,
glowing orbs.
right,
And I have tried. I think the last encounter that I was there for was like 2013, maybe 2015, and I have tried since then to explain what those orbs are,
right,
and I have no explanation as to what they are, other than these glowing balls of light.
mhm,
And it's a a lot of Bigfoot encounters have it. I can't draw the line between Bigfoot and these orbs.
right,
But every picture that we took at this place, digital photo, daytime, nighttime, whatever, was covered in orbs.
wow,
We saw these glowing balls of light. They would go sometimes as high as the trees, probably 100 feet up, and then they would just kind of bounce off of each other.
right,
Uh, it was really strange,
right.
really strange.
Oh,
And that's
yeah,
just part of it.
it is. Yeah. And I have seen orbs not like that, big, but I know people who have. Actually, even where I work, a good friend of mine said he watched one night. He walked out of a building and said this orb, probably the size of a basketball, shot down. He said it moved literally like the speed of light. It was kind of came just in front of him and just hovered there for a few minutes or a few seconds, probably. Then it just kind of zigzagged around until it finally shot over top of the mountain that, you know, a mile away, like that. Just it was here, then it was gone. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you're aware of. What was it last year out in New Jersey? They had the orbs and the drones and all
Mm-hmm.
that weird stuff going on. Nobody really still don't know what. I think the drones, probably military, government, or whatever. But I think the orbs are the bigger question. A lot of people think these drones were investigating the orbs. I don't know,
Could
but
very well be.
I don't
Uh,
know. Nobody knows, but it's interesting. Where how they tie in. That's the question.
I've got one right here. I'm going to read this one, and this is going to kind of go with Hillary and Ray both right here. It says,
Okay.
have you experienced the orbs without the camera yet? That's a scary thing. And the answer to that is yes, I have. In one place where we were sitting at, I actually watched one of them form.
Wow.
I was sitting down, and it started on the ground at my feet, and it just started glowing. It was just a little small light,
Uh-huh.
and it was blue, and it got bigger and bigger, and it got up about the size of a big softball, maybe, or maybe bigger than that. I'm not for sure now. But we saw them anywhere from the size of like a big softball to like the size of a basketball. But this one, I think it got up to about the size of a big softball, and it started floating up. And the guy that was with me, he's like, hey, man, what is that? And I was like, dude, I don't know. He said, what are we going to do? And I said, dude, I'm out of here.
All right.
I don't know what that is. I have no explanation. I'm gone.
All right.
I'm not going to fool with it.
Yeah.
But it was really a strange encounter, and it's something that I've tried to explain. And I can't draw a line between these lights. They didn't emit light. They were glowing, right, but you couldn't see the ground under them or anything else. It wasn't like they were putting off any light. They were just light.
Right.
And we actually had one that followed some guys through the woods.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, really, really strange. And like I said, I can't draw the line between that and Bigfoot. I don't know if it was something that was paranormal, ghost related, or if it was some type of natural phenomenon. I've talked to a couple people on shows that we've had with it, and they had similar sightings of these glowing orbs. And the terrain was really similar. Where we was at, it was kind of sandy, and it had a lot of quartz.
Okay.
And there was a lot of Native American stuff there too. I swear, if you stuck a shovel in the ground anywhere and turned it over, there was a quartz arrowhead that would come up.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it was just really just a hotbed of strangeness is all I can tell you.
Right.
What we had Bigfoot activity there every night. And it was, to this day, I can't explain the lights or what the correlation may be with Bigfoot. If there is any, I don't, like I said, I don't think that there is. I can't prove that there is. So until I can prove that they're connected, I can't really say that. But we saw several different colors too. They were blue, green, yellow, white, red, orange, and just everywhere. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Right. The clearest one I've seen blue and red, but the blue was the clearest one, and I actually caught it on picture where it was a Polaroid. This would have been probably 2001, 2000. We were in a haunted place, supposed to be this big building, and I seen it with my eye. And we were just kind of snapping random pictures with a Polaroid. It was before digital cameras were really a thing, and I seen it. It was near the ceiling. I would say the size of a golf ball or a little bigger. And so I seen it, and I told my brother, I said, take a picture right up there. Not expecting to catch anything, but in that picture, there is a blue orb. And I was like, that kind of validated, oh, okay, well, I didn't just see that. I really did see that. It wasn't just my mind or my eyes playing tricks on me. But yeah, I'm like you. I don't know how they tie into Bigfoot, ghost, whatever. But, or even in the case of like New Jersey, New England, orbs out there were ginormous. Some of the videos I've seen, I don't know. I mean, there's just so much out there like we don't know. Like if we really knew what all was out there, I remember a good friend of mine, a pastor, he's a preacher. I remember he told me one night, he said, if we could see everything going on around us, he said we probably couldn't lay down and go to bed at night, go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I believe
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I do too. Now, with your paranormal investigations and things like that, I know you don't really have a lot of crossover between the cryptids or anything. But like while you have been checking on like Bigfoot or anything like that, have you ever had like I know you have the we call it the ghost box, I believe.
Spirit box and
Spirit box, yeah. Have you ever had one of those go off while you was like investigating like maybe Bigfoot or the Mothman or anything like that?
I have, yeah. Once, I believe. Back this past summer, actually. We were actually, me and a good friend of mine, and he's just kind of starting to get into the whole paranormal Bigfoot world. So he's a little more skittish, kind of a little more scared, I guess you would say. But we were actually in the area where the chief, his mother, had seen the Bigfoot. And well, I want to say this. This is all around the area where I work. That place is known for all kinds of paranormal, ghost, whatever, Bigfoot stories, all within, a half-mile radius. And so we were on top of a mountain, just whatever we could get. I started out with my ghost equipment, spirit box, an ovilus, different things, and it was pretty quiet for the most part. And then I said, Bigfoot has been allegedly seen in this area, killed even. So we started doing tree knocks and stuff. I had the spirit box. I actually kind of forgot the spirit box was on. And it started, by the time we started doing the tree knocks, there were things that came through. I don't remember now exactly what it was, but it had been pretty much silent the whole night until we started doing tree knocks. So yeah, that was in, I believe, June of this past summer.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah,
it's pretty wild.
And I will say, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The same area where we were at, actually, there's a baseball field, a college baseball field. It's up on top of a mountain, and a softball field, but it's off to itself. And back when I first started in law enforcement, it's a real peaceful place. It's beautiful. It's on top of the mountain. Like I would just go up there when I worked night shift just to relax. I would get out of my cruiser. I'd turn the radio up, and I smoked back then, and I'd lean up in front of my cruiser, just smoke and listen to the radio. This one night, I'd done this 100 times or more. Didn't even think about ghosts. But I was leaning up against my cruiser. It was a beautiful night. It was warm. I remember it was very clear, the moon, the stars. And just out of nowhere, I got a very strange feeling. Like, kind of like something was watching me. And from where I was at to the tree line was probably 75, 80 yards maybe. And just out of nowhere, something came tearing down that mountainside. My first thought was a tree's falling. It was loud, like extremely loud. Like, my initial thought, a tree's falling, there's a rock slide, mudslide, even though it wasn't raining. But this thing started up on the hill, I would say several hundred feet, and came tearing down the mountain toward me. And I grabbed my flashlight and shined it, expecting to see something. But when it sounded like when it got to the clearing just in front of me, it went totally south. I got back in my cruiser and I left because I have no idea what it was. I have no idea what it was. I was hoping it would have been a tree or a rock come rolling off. I would have felt better. But there was absolutely. I even went back the next day when it was daylight, expecting to see some down trees or nothing. Nothing was out of place. Just like nothing ever happened. And to this day, I have no idea what it was.
Wow. That is pretty spooky.
It definitely was. It was quite a while before I went back up there and smoked outside of my cruiser. I did eventually, and I never did hear that again, but I have no explanation as to what it was. It just sounded like something was tearing, ripping down that mountain, almost like a car zooming down that mountain through the trees and just charging me. But when it got out of the tree line into the clearing, it just stopped.
And I kind of have a theory on stuff like that too, and I'll run it by you and see what you think.
Okay.
Like graveyards
Mhm.
and, like you said, athletic fields and things like that
Right.
are mostly abandoned unless
Right.
there's some type of event going on.
Right.
People don't go to the graveyard at night,
Nope.
unless you're ghost hunting or whatever.
Right.
So for the most part, places like that would be a safe haven for something to come out to hunt or maybe graze, especially like at a graveyard, because people put things on the graves,
Right.
and that would be, something to come out and look, see what people have left or whatever.
Right.
And I think that's why that Sasquatch and things like that might tend to go to these places like you said, the softball fields or baseball fields or
Right.
graveyards or things like that, is because there's no
Right.
activity there at night.
Right. And that would make sense. I had never really thought about that, but that makes perfect sense. It really does. And like I said, this location and like from where the one got killed in the 50s, literally less than a half mile.
Wow.
I could almost literally see the area where that happened. And so, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was paranormal, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was Bigfoot, but in 44 years of being on this earth, I've never heard nothing like that. And I don't know what it was.
Wow. I know this has been years ago, and one of the guys that we were fishing with has passed away since then. But we were catfishing one night, probably about a half mile from where I'm sitting at right now.
Uh-huh.
And we were sitting underneath an old bridge, and we had some success there fishing, but we were sitting there one night, and it was me and this guy that had passed away, and I think my other friend, and there was a tree that fell, and that is kind of a rare activity to hear.
Right.
You're not often outside enough to hear something like that happen.
Sure.
Which I've heard a lot of trees fall because I spend a lot of time outside, but that tree fell, and then another one fell, and then another one fell. And my friend looked over at me and he said, "I suppose you're going to tell me that was Bigfoot." And I was like, "No." I said, "That was a tree falling 3 times."
Wow.
That's kind of hard to explain.
It is. It is. That doesn't. I'm like you. I've heard a lot of trees fall, but not like 3 at a time. The only time I've heard that is like I remember we had a snowstorm some years back and big heavy snow, power lines out. You could hear trees cracking and popping throughout the night. But just, a random summer, spring night, that's not something you typically hear.
Yeah. And it's only about a mile from where I had my encounter at.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
So
you never know.
Yeah, it was interesting thing.
I'm sure.
Well, it's about 10:30. I guess you're about ready to go. If you don't care, can you hang on for a minute after we end the show? I'd like to go ahead and give you an opportunity now. Go ahead and plug all your channels and everything else that you got while you're on there, so the listeners know where they can find you at.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can follow me as the Supernatural Sleuth over on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And my email is thesupernaturalsleuth@gmail.com for people who have stories or videos or pictures they want to share. Feel free to hit me up anytime. And I appreciate you having me on here tonight.
Oh, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. It's been wonderful to talk to you. I just like to thank everybody that was on tonight. I can get this thing to work here. Ed Whelan, Alyssa Bowling, and Ray Mosley. Thank you guys for the like. I really appreciate that. It kind of helps the channel out quite a bit. For everybody that was on the chat tonight, Ray, Hillary, you guys were active all night. Wonderful chat. I hope you guys got some answers to some of the questions that you had. If there's anything that you guys would like to ask or anything like that, feel free to put it in the chat. You can contact me at GaryKendrick@yahoo.com. It's Gary with 2 R's, all lowercase letters, or you can find me on Facebook. And with that being said, guys, I hope everybody has a great night. And we have Christmas coming up, so it's a wonderful time to be alive, people. And let's just take some time and remember what the season's really about. And with that being said, I want to thank everybody and say good night.
Good night.
Thanks for tuning in to Sasquatch Watch Radio. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Stay connected. Don't miss our next exciting show, airing next Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. To stay updated, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd also love for you to join our Facebook page at facebook.com/Sasquatch Watch Radio and check out our website at squatchradio.com. Share your stories and feedback. Your feedback means the world to us, so please give us a thumbs up on our shows and let us know what you think. Have you had an encounter? If you've had a sighting or encounter, we want to hear from you. Reach out to us through our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. And if you're interested in being a guest on our podcast, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next Monday night.